Thanks for talking to me, guys. I appreciate it. I really enjoyed the movie. So to start out, Alan, I know that you were a writer as well as director on this. How did the idea come to be? I'm not sure if it was originally your story or the other writer, but can you just kind of talk about how the idea came from idea to screen?
Sure. Yeah. Sure. Nice talking to you today. I stumbled upon the Cicada 3301 thing. I was looking for something to write about and didn't want to write about myself. So discovered this phenomenon, this international scavenger hunt for geniuses. This game felt like a recruitment game for people would speculate it was for NSA or CIA or, so it was just a kind of interesting internet phenomenon that took the world by storm. And I started studying it and researching it and took a pass at writing a version of a script about the subject matter and took itself a little too seriously. It was more of like a big budget studio, big studio tentpole 007 kind of movie. And I brought in my buddy Josh Montcalm, who's a brilliant writer, and he really helped kind of find the fun of it, and it became what it is. This more of like an action thriller comedy. This genre blending escapism. Kind of a good fun adventure.
Yeah, it is very funny too. Actually, I think one of your lines are probably the funniest. But so, Conor, can you talk about kind of how you became involved?
Alan reached out to me shortly after we had worked together on Titans and gave me an idea of like what Gwen's story was, but also this world that I knew nothing about. And I think I asked probably twice, is this really a real thing? Because it just blew my mind. Said, do you want to come back up to Toronto? And I got on a flight a couple days later.
Yeah, I was really surprised to find out it was real too. I hadn't realized that.
Yeah.
So out of curiosity, the puzzles that are in it, were those actually any real puzzles, or was that all made up for the script?
It was inspired by, our game was inspired by, but some events that took place, like, it was, I think what made Cicada 331 so interesting was that it started as sort of like an online recruitment game. And one of the puzzles unlocked GPS coordinates to, I think it was 12 countries around the world all at the same time. So people that were following this and tracking this online realized they had real GPS coordinates, and everybody kind of went up to the surface, and the game continued from there. It wasn't just an online game anymore at some point. And so we depict some version of that in the film, but the vast majority of the puzzles themselves were sort of just took a little inspiration from the actual game.
Okay, cool. Conor, when you were, obviously you got a lot from the script, but other than the script, was there anybody else who inspired the character at all?
No. For Gwen, I hadn't really found. I mean, I think we see so many versions, or well, I'd like to see more, but we see versions of like strong female badass characters, and we've talked a lot about this, but like they typically rely on just that statement as a whole. And what I loved about Gwen is that she was already so different that I didn't really want to pull that. Or I think if I want to be inspired by someone else for a character, it has to come pretty quickly. And otherwise, I like to really go by what's on the page. And Gwen was so strong in her own way, in just being brilliant and being a hacker and kind of like loving these puzzles and being as invested and mesmerized by them as Connor Black is. So I really just went with what was there and what Alan kind of explained to me, his idea of who she was, and went from there.
Okay. And Alan, I guess your answer is going to be different because you also partially wrote it. So, but is there anybody that any of the characters really represent, or that you were thinking of when you wrote it, or?
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to write a smart, original film for myself. I historically have played a lot of characters that are just dumb as rocks, and so, which is a lot of fun. but I wanted to, I just wanted a different color for a second. And that's sort of where this came from. And, I wrote the first draft of the script in 2014. And, between the time I wrote it and we started filming, I'd started directing and really enjoyed that more than my desire to play the part, So I mean, the Connor Black character is really a vehicle that I really loved and felt was very personal, and was lucky to find Jack Cassidy, who's I think better than I am. So I think he really brought it to life in a great way, and it all worked out for the best. But I really wanted to direct, and then of course I enjoy doing what I do, and when I felt the need for that same kind of character that I play, I felt like it was appropriate to jump in an Agent Carver type of situation with, kind of a dim-witted NSA agent. And I think it helped. I think it was all meant to be, it feels well-rounded.
Okay. Can you two talk a bit about working with Jack? I want to call him Connor. Jack.
Yeah, it was confusing on set. We had Connor Black, the character. We had Connor Girl. We call her Connor Girl now. She's Connor Girl.
It's still Alan's nickname for me is Connor Girl. And I've done like a couple projects now where there's another Connor. So it always provides for confusing moments for PAs and crew members. But working with Jack was so much fun. He plays this character so well. He just slips right into it. So as someone working opposite him, it just made it easier to slip into it even for me. And it was a really fun experience to work with him because he just embodies, and I know Alan's mentioned this, but like he embodies this character so naturally. And I think, and there's a bit of like a brashness to him that complements Gwen's character that I think provided for a really interesting duo.
Anything else to add, Alan?
No,
No, I know you said some. I just thought maybe you had something. So are either of you, and obviously you don't have to be in the movie, but I'm just curious, are either you into puzzles like this kind of thing, or even just puzzles in general?
I don't think I'm bright enough to solve these puzzles. I tried a few. I can figure a couple out.
I'm not. I think I would just get so frustrated. Jigsaw puzzles, 1,000-piece puzzles, I can murder, but all this stuff that it just makes me feel stupid. Like I'll be trying to figure it out, and then you'll find out the answer.
An example for people watching that don't know, one of the first puzzles that they put up was, it was just sort of an anonymous image. It was just a black image with white text, it was just a picture of words. And it was a kind of a riddle with a signature by Cicada 3301. And somebody figured out that they could run it through a program that pulled pixels out of the image. And there was another picture inside the picture, which I never would have thought to even do that had I seen it and given it I just wouldn't even given it a second thought. So that's kind of what kicked off the party and made people realize like, oh, something's going on here and somebody's playing a game. I just, the kind of people that figure that stuff out and put it together, I have huge respect for. Because I just wouldn't have thought to do it,
Yeah, I'm not sure if they inspired a lot of like web games or the other way around, because I know there's some of them floating around where you have to use steganography and that kind of thing. So what was the most difficult part
of making this movie?
I was going to say, for you, making it or being in it, you have both. So making this movie was hard. It was a tough one. I mean, just had a lot of, every project is like this. And just when you think you've figured out the business and like how to produce and how to, how to look ahead and avoid problems or solve problems before they start, there's some unique version of that on every film that you just can't avoid all the issues that you're going to face. So
this was a tough one to make. And we spent there's a lot of visual effects in the film, for people that haven't seen it. It's a bit of a fantasy world that we enter because it's told through this unreliable narrative device that our protagonist leads us through. It's him retelling a story, and he's not always honest, and crazy things that happen in your mind happen in the real world, and you're trying to put together the pieces, what's real and what's not. And so there's a lot of visual effects shot and VFX shots, and it was hard to get some of those done because they're big. So a lot of time we're trying to cut the movie together, and we don't have 100 of the shots that we need, and and some of them we never got, so we had to retell the story a little bit, and it was it was tough. It was a tough process because it's a big film with a lot of scope. I mean, it's I think we had about $5 million to make the movie, and movies that have those kind of budgets are usually just kind of people in a room talking, and it's still hard enough to make those on that kind of budget, and this is not that kind of movie. So it was challenging to put it together, but with a little time and perseverance and some amazing people around us and great cast, we got it done, and in a good way.
Okay. Connor?
I mean, Alan had to do all the hard stuff. No, but I as far as the challenging bits, and as for me, I think so much like he said, it is a lot of conveying what's on the page or what's in his head, or what the idea is, of me just clarifying, like, okay, so what are we looking at, and just so I'm tracking the right narrative, or all of these vis effects stuff. That stuff's always just requires you to have an active imagination. You just want to make sure your imagination is synced up to the right thing, that you're imagining the right thing.
Right.
I've had directors explain things before, and then I see what they were, and it wasn't on this, but other projects. I'm like, that is not what you described. So whenever you have vis effects and green screen, it's just like, and I honestly think that is what helps about having Alan understood so much of this script. Is like, my whole thing with directors is I'm just like, please know what you want, and please just like explain it so that we can do our job. So that was relatively easy for me.
All right. Well, thank you so much, both of you. I really appreciate the time. And like I said,
Thank
I
you.
really enjoyed the movie. So thanks a lot.
Thank you. Glad you enjoyed it.
Thanks. Bye-bye.